Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Emetophobia-Free podcast. Today we are joined by Hannah O'Day. Hello, Hannah.
Hello.
It's lovely to have you with us. Hannah is a emetophobia-free coach based in upstate New York, and she's also an ex-emetophobe herself. So she has a fabulous story to tell. And Hannah's point today, or Hannah's main point today, is twofold. One is that she's in the healthcare industry and in a job where she comes across people who are sick regularly. Okay, and how that impacted her emetophobia as she was training to do that job with emetophobia, and how she manages that now. And also, Hannah has an autoimmune disease, so it's how she managed that with emetophobia and how she manages that now. Am I right with all of that, Hannah?
Yes, that's all fine.
Amazing. Okay, so we'll dive straight in then. So, Hannah, do you want to give us a little bit of an introduction to yourself, how long you've had emetophobia, how it impacted you, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, that works. It was hard to tell when I first got emetophobia because leading up to it, I had some contamination OCD. So I know in kindergarten we had a Christmas party and there was a kid that was sick, and I got really anxious over it. So it was probably around that time. I was pretty young. It kind of waned and waxed over elementary school, middle school, and high school.
Yeah.
I think it really took off when I went to college just because it was a major life change. And in America, at least, we have like buffet style eating at college. So I felt like scared about that. And I would always make sure I sanitized my hands and inspected all the food before I ate it.
Yep.
But in college, there's a lot of things I did. Like whenever I went to a course, I had to sit in a very specific seat.
Okay.
So that way I could escape if someone got sick or if I had to get sick.
Yep.
And I know one day when I wasn't able to sit where I wanted to sit, I just couldn't focus the entire time.
Yes.
It was also difficult living in a dorm because during the winter at one point, there was a norovirus outbreak in one of the dorms, and I was just waiting for it to come and get me, which it didn't do, but it was always on the mind.
Yes. Yep.
And I didn't consider it at all when I decided that I wanted to go into healthcare. It was a major factor that I kind of left out.
Yep.
So I had to do 2 clinicals, and one of them was not in a hospital, but it did have people that were sick rather frequently.
Yep.
And I was upfront with the person that I was working about, and they were really nice about it. And I felt like that 3 months that I was there, it actually got a little bit better. I was able to sort of help people that were being sick. And then my second clinical, which was sort of COVID, took off. So there was more stress from that. There was a lot of people getting sick, and I worked with someone else. So that gave me a little more leeway to step out from a room if I wasn't feeling comfortable. I didn't have to stay in a room.
Okay.
And I think that's sort of when I had the realization that I couldn't continue with emetophobia if I wanted to do the things that I wanted to do.
Brilliant. Okay. So that was going to be my question. I was going to rewind to, it was a big factor that you left out of your decision to go into healthcare.
Yeah.
And I can relate to that because I went into teaching and little people. So kindergarten in the States and reception class in the UK. And I wanted to know your thought process behind that because lots of people can relate to it. Lots of emetophobes go, it's not going to stop me. I am still going to live my life. It's just going to be really hard. And I'm going to struggle through each day. Other people won't be able to relate to that because they will think, there's no way I would even sign myself up for that. So what was your thought process behind going into healthcare in the first place?
Well, it's kind of funny. I am one of 3, and all of us are in healthcare. Growing up, my mom had all 3 of us sort of in quick succession. So she was overwhelmed by 3 children, and my grandmother came over to help us.
Okay.
And she was there every single week. And then she developed dementia when I was about 8 years old.
Right.
So there was sort of a role reversal. And throughout my life in high school, I was sort of able to take care of her like she had done for me. So that was something that was the only time I really felt like I was doing something meaningful outside of the emetophobia that it wasn't controlling.
Right.
And I didn't really factor in, she wasn't in the hospital, she was in my house. So I didn't factor in all the different finer points.
Yes, I understand that. Right, okay. So when you came to your second clinical and you realised I'm going to have to do something here because this is going to be too hard to continue, what steps did you take? Had you tried anything to that point to overcome it?
Um, I tried a lot of things. Starting in second grade, I tried like traditional talk therapy.
Yeah.
Um, I tried, I don't remember if it's EMDR or EDMR for eye
EMDR. Yeah.
desensitization,
Yep.
but I didn't have any trauma that I could think of associated with it, so it
Yep.
didn't really do much.
Yep.
And I tried some CBT. I think I went to therapy. When I went to college, they put me on like 3 different medications to try to manage the anxiety, and none of them did anything.
Yes.
But
Yep.
I did have the Emetophobia-Free manual. I think it was one of the older ones that was blue with a daisy in the middle.
Oh, yeah.
And it did help, but I wasn't able to be stern with myself and get myself past a certain point. When I started to feel uncomfortable, I just kind of got overwhelmed.
Okay.
So I knew that it had worked previously and helped get my symptoms down, just not where I wanted them to be.
Yes.
So I Googled the manual and I saw that there was coaching available.
Brilliant. Okay. So you'd been through it previously. What age was that?
I think when I first went off to college,
Okay.
I got the manual. I never made it through the manual. I
Fine.
made it up through a few pages, but I sort of had it there as like a safety support.
Yeah.
But
okay. So you saw there was coaching available, and obviously got the most up-to-date version of the manual because it's changed a lot since when the Daisy was on the cover. And you went through with a coach.
yes.
How was that experience different than doing it yourself with the manual?
Yeah. It was different because it was sort of nice to talk it through with someone.
Yeah.
And outside of my family, I didn't really tell people
Yeah.
that I had emetophobia.
Mm-hmm.
So it sort of took away the shame of it because there was someone else that could understand what I had been going through over like
Yeah.
the past probably almost 20 years.
Yeah.
And then just having her hold me accountable and tell me how I was supposed to be progressing through it so that I could make goals for each week. And then when I achieved them, it made me feel a little more self-efficacy each time.
Brilliant. Love that. And for the people listening who have not been through the program, who are considering going through the program, what kind of goals are you talking about? Because it may be, if you've been through CBT before, that your brain jumps straight to some form of exposure goal.
Yeah, that was
No.
not what I was doing.
Okay.
Like progressing through the chapters for each week, listening to the videos, and then each chapter has an action not
Yes.
related to exposure, but like processing positives and making sure that I was staying on top of that.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Brilliant. Okay. So when we talk about processing positives, that is shifting your perspective on life, because when you have emetophobia, often it's quite a negative lens through which you are viewing life, and all of your life is viewed through an emetophobic lens, if you will. And one of the actions in the manual is called processing your positives, which is basically allowing you to see the positives in your life and the little incidental things that are happening or you are actually doing yourself that are positive and that can be viewed outside of that emetophobic lens. And it boosts your self-esteem. That's the whole point of the activity. So when Hannah talks about goals each week, we're not talking about going and eating some chicken or going to a restaurant or having somebody cook for you. All those things come with time when you are ready for them, when you want to set those goals for yourself. The goals throughout the program are you boosting your self-esteem, you learning how your mind works, you learning to think differently, you learning how to think in a more helpful way and what unhelpful thinking styles you've got. So it's all very much cognitive work. It's work around how you think rather than going and doing something scary. I just wanted to clarify that because I think people listening will go, oh, goals, it's like CBT. No, it's not. Okay, so that's wonderful. So you went through, how long did it take you then, would you say? Because I know it's very difficult when people ask me that. I say, how long did it take you to overcome your emetophobia from when you started the program to when you ended it? Because it's a difficult question to answer because it's not like a flip switch, is it? It's not one day you've got emetophobia and then you wake up and, ta-da, I haven't. It's a gradual thing. How long roughly do you think it took you?
I guess I went through the program and I wasn't sure like how much over it I was because I didn't come in contact with being sick.
Okay, yep.
But I was doing an intense exercise class, and one day I felt a little sick after, and
Yeah.
I was able to like get through that and talk to someone that was having a conversation with me and not freak out. And I think I finished it sometime over the summer. So that
Okay.
fall, I was working in a nursing home,
Okay.
and the stomach bug went through that.
Yep.
And I caught it. I didn't end up getting physically sick, but I didn't have anxiety around it. And I was just kind of like, oh well.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. So how long was that? So did you say you started in summer and then
Mm-hmm.
fall that happened? So only a few months?
Yeah, I'd say probably like it took about a month and a half to get over through the program, and then
Brilliant.
probably about another month and a half, so about 3, 4 months.
Fabulous. Amazing. Brilliant. Okay. So, and that's really interesting, isn't it? Because when you get through the program, you believe you'll cope. You have a solid belief that you'd cope.
Mm-hmm.
But when you are first time confronted with it, that kind of consolidates the fact that, oh, yeah, I do cope with this and this is okay.
Mm-hmm.
I had the stomach flu only a few weeks ago. And similar to yourself, it was there was no anxiety. It was just an acceptance of the situation. It was just, okay, this is what's happening. Brilliant. Get myself comfortable. Write off everything for the next couple of days I need to write off. Get myself in bed and take it easy. And that's what I did. And it's a really liberating feeling to know that that's how you respond to being sick yourself or to other people being sick, because obviously you're around people who are sick regularly. When you are around people who are sick regularly in your job, because you're an occupational therapist, when that happens, how are your thoughts different now to when you had emetophobia? What's your experience like of it now compared to back when you had emetophobia when you were doing your training?
Instead of like being afraid or trying to get away,
Yeah.
usually it's looking at it from a different perspective.
Yes.
I've had some situations that are actually have been funny and humorous that I wouldn't have had if I was still emetophobic.
Good. Yeah.
And it's sort of being able to give that person the comfort because no one feels good when they're being sick. So the
Nope.
last thing that would probably make you feel comfortable is having someone running away. So there's only one uncomfortable person in the room instead of two.
Okay. So when you are confronted with it, when you do go into work and somebody is there who is being physically ill, are you anxious at that point? Do you get the, fight or flight or have to really, really manage your thinking? Or is it just another day and I've just got to get through it like I get through something else?
It's just a normal day. It's not something that I like dread before I go into work. It just
Brilliant.
is part of everything.
Yes. Fabulous. And I think that when you have emetophobia might sound pie in the sky and hard to believe, but when you overcome emetophobia, I don't know about yourself, I'm speaking for myself here, but it becomes something that's inconvenient and unpleasant that you've to deal with. Just the same, I'm just, again, speaking for myself here, I'm not an occupational therapist, but I have a toddler. So when she has a racking cough and she's really, really sore and she's coughing up phlegm and she's retching, she's not being sick, but she's coughing up phlegm and she's really sore and just really poorly, fever, that's to me as uncomfortable as when she's sick because she's in pain. And I just want her to feel better and to be able to get her through it as best we can and in as less pain as we can. And it becomes, or the people being sick becomes similar to the flu, similar to a chest infection, similar to an ear infection, something that I don't enjoy and I wouldn't want to deal with if I didn't have to. But if it's there, I can deal with it and there's no anxiety attached. Is that the same for you?
Yeah, I think it's also a lot of times when people are sick, it's not contagious. So it's not, it happens more frequently than I thought it would in
Okay.
certain settings. So it's just sort of like it happens and you're like, oops.
Yes.
And then you figure out what you need to do from that. Like if they got dirty, but in the hospital, I also clean up a lot of other things that are not sickness related.
Yes.
So it's just sort of thrown into that pile of things.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. It's brilliant. Lovely. Okay. So your experience now is vastly different. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
has no barrier to you doing any job in healthcare now. Should we move on to your autoimmune disease? And do you
Sure.
want to talk about what that is, how it impacted you, and your journey through that with emetophobia?
Yeah. I guess having emetophobia, I had IBS, like a lot of
Uh-huh.
people that have
Yep.
emetophobia from the anxiety. And then when I started my first job, I all of a sudden started getting some really bad stomach pain. And I just kind of ignored it and thought that it was just the IBS or
Yeah.
anxiety. And then it ended up progressing to something that was more than that. And
Yeah.
so I ended up having to get a colonoscopy. So I've had to get two of those in the past 4 years.
Okay.
And I have ulcerative colitis. So
Ah.
it's sort of, I had to go through a whole diet change and start medications. And there was a lot of stuff that kind of came out of the blue, I guess, because no one else that I knew had it.
Yeah.
So it was really nice to go through that after going through the Thrive program because I didn't
Yes.
feel like I was out of control of things. I sort of felt like I had more power. And
Brilliant.
I ended up being on steroids for like 6 months and had a flare up for a year over the past 2 years. And that whole time, I felt a lot less sick than when I had emetophobia. So it was
Ah.
nice.
Yes. So this is me being ignorant, right? So forgive me. Do you think you had the autoimmune disease when you had emetophobia but you were unaware of it? Or do you think it developed afterwards?
I think it developed pretty shortly afterwards. I know at one point I thought I had a stomach bug, but it ended up not being a stomach bug. It was the
Okay.
ulcerative colitis. So it sort
Okay.
of, I think that that's when it started. I could be wrong, but
Okay.
I believe it was shortly after the emetophobia.
Okay. So the symptoms aren't, because again, ignorance. I don't know much about ulcerative
Mhm.
colitis. So I don't know the symptoms. Are they similar to emetophobia? Is it nausea? Is it IBS? Or is it
It's
different?
it's similar.
Yeah.
Um, there is a lot of nausea and like bloating and stuff like that. There are some differences that would tell you that it's not IBS. I guess they're a little graphic.
Okay.
You end up like having a lot of blood in your digestive system. So
Right.
that's the concern. But
Right.
it is really similar. Like I was having a lot of pain in my intestines, like
Yeah.
and just waking up feeling nauseous almost all the time.
Okay. Okay. So this is a metaphorical question, I suppose, or a hypothetical
Mm-hmm.
question, because you didn't have it when you had emetophobia. But for anybody out there who has an autoimmune immune disease, or something similar with emetophobia, alongside emetophobia, do you believe that would be a barrier to them overcoming their emetophobia?
I don't think it's a barrier. I think it's something that compounds the feeling of helplessness because I know if it is something like IBD, which irritable bowel disease instead
Yep.
of
Yep.
syndrome, I know personally I had to go to the bathroom a lot more. So I felt like
Yes.
even more anxious about that. If I was
Yes.
emetophobic, I'd probably just not even want to be too far from a bathroom and definitely
Yep.
cut off a lot of the stuff
Yep.
that I was enjoying. Because even without emetophobia, sometimes you have to stay a little bit closer to home.
Yes. Okay. Okay. So, do you believe, kind of a follow-up question, that the
Mm-hmm.
program, the Emetophobia-Free program, allowed you to deal with the symptoms of your autoimmune disease more effectively than you would have done without the skills gained from the program?
Definitely.
Okay.
I think that if I had had emetophobia, I'd have just felt sort of powerless because I know that's
Yes.
how I felt when I was put on a lot of medication for the emetophobia.
Yeah.
Um, with the ulcerative colitis, I was put on some very strange diets without a lot of explanation.
Okay.
So instead of just doing the diets, I went and did my own research.
Good.
So, sorry,
Don't worry.
I ended up sort of coming up with my own diet plan. I still took the medication, but if I had had emetophobia, I think I would have been more afraid of my own body to even try.
Yes.
And I knew that if I had tried something and it didn't work out and things maybe got a little bit worse, I'd be able to cope with that.
Lovely. Okay. So I think that's an important point, because we do get a lot of questions, enquiries through HQ, saying, I've got an autoimmune disease, I have IBS, I have all sorts of different things, Crohn's disease. Am I still going to be able to get over this thing? Or this is really hard because I have Crohn's disease and I'm going to struggle to get over it. And I think the message back to you, if that is you, and those are things that you are currently dealing with, is that the skills in the program will help you manage your symptoms and will help you manage the experience of your symptoms. It's not saying that it's going to take the symptoms away, but you will be able to manage and minimize those symptoms by how you manage them internally and cognitively. Does that?
Yeah.
Do you agree with that?
Definitely. I was really bad. I was probably one of the worst emetophobes. I know they all say that they are.
They do.
But I didn't ever see myself like being able to work in healthcare, and the autoimmune disease after was like, it didn't even give me a blip or anything. So it's definitely manageable and doable.
Brilliant. I love that. So yes, if that's you, just bear in mind that this is a skill-based program, and it allows you to look internally and to manage your emotions to everything in life. So if you are in chronic pain for whatever reason, how you respond to that pain does have an impact on how you experience that pain. There's research that supports that. So it's very much equipping yourself with the intellectual understanding of how your mind works and how the physical body and the mental side of things connect, and how they are very much intertwined, and that one can massively impact the other. So as we know in a previous podcast, we know that emetophobes feel more sick, more nauseous than non-emetophobes do, because they are creating the feeling of nausea using their mind. Now, that works in reverse as well. So people who are struggling physically with something, they can exacerbate those symptoms by how they process them mentally, or they can minimize them and reduce them by how they process them mentally. So it's a very important skill set to have if you are dealing with something like that. It will help with not only your emetophobia, but it will help with you managing the symptoms of your other disease or condition.
Yeah.
You agree? Fabulous. Okay. So I guess my final question, or almost final question, would be, if you think the worst emetophobe out there, and now you are completely emetophobia-free, what would your advice be to anybody who is struggling and thinking that they must be the worst emetophobe, or that they are different to other people and that they can't overcome it?
I would say that it's hard to imagine other people being there, but I was definitely, in college, I was up every Sunday night dreading the week and just didn't really do anything that I wasn't thinking was going to protect me from emetophobia.
Yeah.
And now I don't have any IBS symptoms. Like, I had that the entire time I had emetophobia, and it's gone.
Yes.
So it's something that doesn't seem like it's possible when you're in it, because you just are letting that emetophobia control you, but there's a much better world on the other side.
Yeah, there is. Brilliant. So it affected, just for a bit of context and a bit of background, it affected your sleep. You were worrying you couldn't sleep. It affected your bowels through the anxiety, you had IBS. What else did it affect? What was life like at the height of your emetophobia?
Where I lived, I shared a wall with the bathroom. So anytime someone used the bathroom, I would wake up and I would be convinced that the only reason they could be using it was because they were sick.
Yeah.
If I felt nauseous and I was wearing something, I wouldn't wear it again, because for some reason in my mind, it had a bad juju or whatever.
Yeah, association. Yep, absolutely. Yep.
I walked to high school, so I didn't ever want to be in the car with someone, because I would thought that it was just more germs could get on me.
Okay.
And I would only eat things that were in a package if I was out of my house, that were completely sealed. I wouldn't take in a container. I wouldn't ever eat with my hands.
Fabulous. Yes.
So
Yes,
a
I can
lot of
relate to
stuff.
a lot of that.
And even using like a specific bathroom stall,
Yeah.
I had to use like one that was in the middle, but not the last one. So it was a lot of little tiny rules that didn't do anything to
Yes.
help and just made
Yes.
me feel less in control.
Fabulous. Yeah. Okay. So all of those safety seeking and avoidance behaviors, as we can call them that, are no longer. You don't do
No.
any of that anymore.
The one thing that I do is I wash my hands all the time because I'm in a hospital, but there's
Yes.
nothing triggered. Like
Yes.
it's not like I feel like I don't wash my hands at home unless I'm about to eat or using the bathroom. So it's
Yep.
something that is just a work thing that could have
Yes.
never been that way before.
Yeah. And am I right in saying that that's encouraged anyway in a hospital is to keep your hands clean?
That's like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's more than encouraged. That's
Is it
like
as a
you have to
rule?
do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So it wouldn't necessarily be classed as a safety seeking or avoidance behavior there because you're not actually safety seeking or avoidance. You're just following the rule, aren't you? That's what you need to
Yeah.
do, which is brilliant. So if you are struggling, listening to this and thinking, I would love to work in healthcare, or I just can't see how I would work in healthcare, or it's too hard for me to get over emetophobia because I have this autoimmune disease or similar, then take heed of Hannah's story. You know, it doesn't matter how severe your symptoms are and how much this thing has controlled your life to this point, you can learn the skills to overcome it and to take back control of your life. It's entirely possible. Hannah has done it, and she's more than willing to answer any questions if you have them. She's, as we mentioned before, she's a coach. She's based in upstate New York. You can find her on the website if you want to have a consultation with her or a chat in more detail about it. And it's been really lovely having you on the podcast today, Hannah. It's I've never spoken to anybody who has had emetophobia and worked in healthcare before.
There's a lot
So
more of
that's
us.
yeah.
Yeah.
Is there more of you in the hospital that you work in?
Yep, there are.
Yeah.
There's definitely a lot more than would appear.
Yes. Amazing. I was actually in the hospital the other week for an appointment, and I was talking to the nurse, and she said, "What do you do?" Just casual conversation. So I told her, "Emetophobia coach," and what's that? So I explained. She went, "Oh, we've just got a trainee nurse that started it. I would really help that." So there are lots of people who are in a healthcare setting who are really struggling, and you don't need to. You don't need to struggle. It's not something that you have to put up with. It's not something that you have to live with. You can overcome it, and you can learn to really enjoy your job, regardless of whether
Yeah.
people are ill or not, which is amazing. Brilliant. So have you got any final words before we go today, Hannah? Any last hints, tips, advice that you want to give to anybody listening?
I guess this is just like a really bad time of year where there's a lot of external stressors added on to the neurovirus being all over social media and the news. So a lot of people are feeling low, but there's only up from here.
Absolutely. There really is. Brilliant. Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time, and hopefully we'll see you again on the podcast at some time soon. That'd be lovely.
Sure. Thank you for having me.